Good Sunday morning. Welcome to WGN TV Political Report. I'm Paul Lisnek. The city of Chicago once again in President Donald Trump's crosshairs as the commander-in-chief attempts to use his power to quell what he claims is a public safety emergency. Last week, the president took control of Washington, D.C. police and deployed the National Guard to the nation's capital to fight crime. And he said Chicago could be next.
We're going to take back our capital. We're going to make it beautiful again, but we're going to make it, more importantly, safe again. It's going to be so safe. It's going to be a model. And then we'll look at other cities also. If we need to, we're going to do the same thing in Chicago, which is a disaster. We have a mayor there who's totally incompetent.
Well, despite the president's claims, violence crime in Chicago is down 23% year to year. And Governor J.B. Pritzker says Trump has no legal authority to send troops to Chicago. I talked with Illinois Attorney General Kwame Raoul about that and what's next.
You know, so much is going on with regard to the president exercising special powers. I want to specifically focus in on his activating the National Guard in our state's capital, D.C. He does have special powers there to do what he's doing, doesn't he?
He has limited powers to do so. And there's, of course, a distinction between Washington, D.C. and any other city in America, because Washington, D.C. is in part supervised by the federal government. Though it does have its own home rule powers granted by Congress.
Well, let me take it to the next step, because as we know, whenever he exercises an emergency power, the Supreme Court seems to, on what's called their shadow docket, basically bless him doing what he's doing without arguments, without briefs. If he were to declare a national emergency in the city of Chicago on some of these same violence issues, how would that play out here?
Well, it would certainly play out with me immediately filing a lawsuit that he was in violation of the Posse Comitatus Act. You know, if he tried to enact to deploy the National Guard or any other military force into the streets of Chicago in violation of federal law, I would challenge it. There's only three conditions upon which he would be able to do so without the governor's consent, without the governor actually doing so. One is if there's if there is a foreign invasion. Two, if there's some sort of rebellion, some sort of insurrection, and, you know, apart from something happening within the city of Chicago akin to what happened on January 6th, which he did not deploy the National Guard for, there would be no such cause to repel a rebellion. And then finally, to put into effect some federal law, some federal action. The last time it was done was by Nixon, who deployed National Guard to deliver mail, I believe in New York, some 55 years ago. And so none of those conditions, I can't imagine any of those conditions existing in Chicago anytime soon. So under law, he would not be empowered to do so.
Well, he's also been talking about having to eliminate no cash bail policies in the states where those exist. Obviously, we have it here in Illinois, and putting people's feelings about what they think about that policy aside. He has no control over Illinois law, but could he have the federal Congress pass a law that makes no cash bail laws, illegal, unconstitutional, and that forces it gone? Is there any way to do that?
Apart from a constitutional amendment, which is very difficult to achieve, and I can bet pretty safely that he wouldn't be able to pass a constitutional amendment. There's a pesky little thing called the 10th Amendment that recognizes sovereignty of states to enact their own laws governing the state and enforce their own laws with governing the states, and that includes criminal law. And so he nor Congress would have any such power unless they passed a constitutional amendment that either amended the 10th Amendment or rendered some of it ineffective.
As you know, Texas Democrats fled their state to avoid a quorum where they're trying to redistrict the state and gerrymander it. Many came here to Illinois. They're moving on from that situation now. And of course, a judge here in Quincy said that, no, we can't enforce Texas laws here. Do you, as Attorney General, have any concern that if this made its way up to the Supreme Court on a shadow docket, no argument, no briefing situation might say, sure, one state can go ahead and enforce the laws of another?
Well, yeah. Well, first of all, the action was filed in state court, and again, there's a sovereignty to be respected. And I believe if somehow it made its way, would have to make its way first off through the Illinois courts of review, and then be appealed from there. Even this Supreme Court, I think, would resist acting on such a case. And I have to remind you that they did some venue shopping within the state. They filed this in Adams County, where none of the Texas legislators had been to or were anywhere around. And I think they filed it in Adams County because they sought out the opportunity to have a friendly court. But even in doing so, the judge in Adams County, who is a well-respected judge, did the right thing.
As you know, many blue states, California, including J.B. Pritzker, have said we may fight fire with fire and redistrict here. Two questions. In Illinois, every state is different. Is it even doable by 2026? And as a side note, is Illinois the right state to talk about let's have fair districting efforts?
Yeah, well, as you may know, I chaired redistricting in 2011. And during that session, I did two things. I passed the Illinois Voting Rights Act, and then we soon thereafter passed a constitutional amendment protecting voting rights. There's a distinction between, I know there's been a lot of finger pointing about gerrymandering and so forth. The reality is like-minded people gravitate towards the same geographic areas. And we have not only the Federal Voting Rights Act to respect here in the state of Illinois, but we have an Illinois Voting Rights Act. And
is it doable by 2026?
It'd be challenging. Petition circulation has already started, but I think it's important to distinguish what's occurred in Texas and what they're trying to do further in Texas, and what has occurred in Illinois.
And Mr. Attorney General, let me just less than a minute left. So I just want to ask you, your office successfully worked with other states to get a preliminary injunction on the blocking of Medicaid data from going to the government. Obviously, they're trying to pull people off Medicaid. Can you give us an update on that? And what about people who say, yeah, if you don't belong in the country, we should not have you on getting Medicaid?
Well, I think those same people would say that they value their own privacy. And when you start violating privacy protections that we have, you don't only do it for those that you want to target, you do it for law-abiding Americans, and we value the privacy of law-abiding Americans.
All right, and still to come on WGN-TV Political Report, who's in, who's out, and what else you need to know after Illinois' political hopefuls gathered at the state fair. Plus, the requests for help from Springfield, they just keep piling up, what the legislature is facing in the fall veto session. We'll be right back.